few people showing up. Well, for those of you that don't know, and I think I know most of you out there, I'm Freeman. And today is Friday the 13th. It is the 699th anniversary of the death of the Templars. And this is what made Friday the 13th have its mystique. If you've ever wondered why Friday the 13th is considered the most unlucky day, well, it was the day that they came in and swooped everybody's fathers and sons out and burnt them at the stake. And you know, another one that might remember, I think you all are all familiar with Captain Morgan. Yeah? We've drunk the spiced rum every once in a while, right? Well, they like to keep these things in our minds because Captain Morgan was accused of doing what I'm about to do with you, and then was ritually murdered for doing so. But luckily, I never have sworn allegiance to the Freemasons. I've never taken my vows or gone through rituals or anything like that. And many people ask me, did your father try to talk you into joining Masonry? And I think that that's a key point because no, he did not. And one of the key reasons for this is because Masonry does not recruit. And the reason for this is spiritual as far as I'm concerned, because you must join of your own free will and accord. And this is one of the things that you will say when you enter the lodge to take your oath of obligation, that you have come of your own free will and accord. And the only other regulation to be a Mason is that you believe in a supreme being. You believe in a higher power. Of course, they call this the great architect of the universe. Right? So, in order to understand this whole story, we've got to go way back. Back to before history. We're going to jump all the way back to prehistory, and I'm going to even hit upon some things that are not completely bona fide at this time, not completely provable. Yes. For me, doing the symbolism, doing the understanding of what Freemasonry is and where it comes from, I use their symbols to decipher the aspects of Freemasonry. So one of the main symbols that you're going to see in a lot of places is the red square. And the red square is a magical symbol which you'll see on compass banks, Wells Fargo banks, the red square of Russia. The red square is a constant theme within what I consider Masonic symbolism in corporate logos. And the red is a symbol of Mars in magic, and the square is a symbol of man in magic. So you've got Mars man, red square. And what we find is that this brotherhood follows their allegiance back to Atlantis. And so, well, we got to get into the story of Atlantis. Who is Atlantis? Where did it come from? My personal belief in all of my research is that Atlantis was Mars. This is not a common belief. This is one of my own pet theories. But it fits all the clues, and that's what I work with, are the clues. And so we have pyramids and structures on Mars, that Sphinx faces on Mars, and I've recently saw another video that showed me some new structures on Mars that I hadn't seen before. So if you look into it, you're going to find that there absolutely are structures on Mars, and they are very much the same as the pyramids you find in Giza and the pyramids that you find in South America, Central America. The Prometheus Mars mission, which both HW and W both tried to get a man on Mars, is a very big deal for them. And of course, Prometheus was the one that brought fire from the gods to mankind to give mankind power. So we have the Prometheus Mars mission. The poster itself, which is on my video, shows Sumerian architecture on Mars. This is the official Boeing poster. Two men walking up a hill, which the hill is a symbol within Masonry, and the sun low on the horizon, which is another symbol of Masonry. And of course the word horizon comes from Horus, rising, and sun set is his eternal foe, Set. And that's where these terms come from. So much of Masonry is wrapped into your lives, you have no idea. No idea. So, we've got these Martians. And if you take the god Mars and you transliterate him into Greek, he becomes Aries, right? So Aryan means Martian. Means same thing. Martian, Aryan, same words. So, this jumps us to Egypt. Okay, so now there was a great cataclysm in the past. Everybody's in agreement with this, that there absolutely seemed to have been a civilization prior to this one that was a high civilization, and then there was a major catastrophe. Everyone's in agreement with the major catastrophe, just not everybody's in agreement with the high civilization in the past. But the evidence is clear if you look at the pyramids and other ancient structures of the world that we cannot do in the 21st century. We cannot build a Great Pyramid of Giza. We cannot stack 300, 1,200 ton stones like there are in Baalbek, Lebanon. These things are impossible for us to do in the 21st century. We do not have the technology to accomplish this. So you have to accept the higher civilization in the ancient past, or you're missing a huge big piece of this puzzle. The Freemasons absolutely believe this. Okay, this is by Manly P. Hall. It's Freemasonry and its connections with ancient Egypt. And of course, you've always wondered why there's a pyramid on the dollar bill. It's because they come from the men, which I believe are from Mars. And I believe that the Martians, the Atlanteans, came down to Earth and took over Lemuria, which was Earth, where the brown people lived. I'm still working on the red and yellow. I'm not sure where they're from. The Hopi say they're from outer space, so, you know, they're most likely another race from somewhere else. But they went underground, the Hopi, and they tell you that whole story of how when the Great Cataclysm occurred, they had to go into subterranean, and then they came back up. But during this Great Cataclysm, many of the high civilizations were moved into very bad states of life, and even had to turn to cannibalism and other things like down in the South Sea Islands, where there doesn't seem to be any food to sustain humans, but yet they're all there. And we have those great statues of an Easter Island. And of course, Easter is after their goddess Esther, who is Columbia standing on her. She's also known as Ashtart or Ishtar. But this is Manly P. Hall, and he is talking about the connections between Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Freemasonry, and how Freemasonry is spawned from the ancient mysteries of Egypt. This is Sir Francis Bacon and his book New Atlantis, which is what America was founded on. This is the story of Solomon's house, which was an invisible college that actually controlled reality or civilization with a hidden hand, as we seem to have today. Solomon's house was the secret college that analyzed all other civilizations and came up with ways to make their civilizations better. And it goes on and on. We have other Freemasons, C.W. Ledbetter, who is a high-level Freemason, connecting all of the ancient rites of Freemasonry to the mystery schools of the ancient past. And then even Le Plongeon, who is another high worshipful master Freemason, and all of these guys are well regarded within Freemasonry, writes about how the temples of South and Central America are based on these same people, and how it all comes forward to Freemasonry. So, we've got this line. We've got this, all of a sudden, the best dating for the pyramids is 10,500 BC. And all of a sudden, planet Earth gets these superstructures. There weren't any before it. There is no pre-Egypt. There's no leading up to Egypt. All of a sudden, here comes Egypt, spawned full and completely active with medicine, astronomy, science, mathematics, writing, All of these things, full blown, to the point where here we are in the 21st century still trying to figure it out, right? We don't know. So when we read the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, we will find that Adam and Eve were told to replenish the earth. Now, to replenish means to repopulate. So that means there was a population prior to Adam and Eve, or else the Bible's wrong. When Cain slays Abel, and he is sent to the land of Nod, he says, please don't send me to the land of Nod, all those people will kill me. And the Lord said, well, I'll mark you so that they don't kill you. So who were all those people? If Adam and Eve were the first people, then who was he worried about in the land of Nod? Right? So there's way more to this story. And I was wondering if we were going to even get all the way to the Raelians in this story, but we're not going to go there yet. So what you've got is this ancient story where I find that if you don't begin with these ancient astronauts, which we're going to get heavily into in the next two shows on the Freeman Perspective, so you want to check that out because we're going to dig deep into it. You're not going to get the whole picture if you don't accept the ancient astronaut story, because it all fits in. The next thing that you have is is Moses coming up and wanting to exodus from the Pharaoh. And now when Moses goes before the Lord, and the Lord says, well, go over to the Pharaoh and I'll give you this magic wand, this magic staff, and cast it down and it'll turn into a serpent and he'll have to let you go. Well, so Moses says, well, I'm not very good at speaking. Can I bring my brother Aaron and let him do the talking for me? And he's like, yeah, all right, let Aaron do it then. All right, so Moses and Aaron go before the Pharaoh and they say, hey, I've got my staff and I'm going to cast it and it's going to become a serpent. And the Pharaoh's magicians all stand up and so? And they all throw down their staffs and they all become serpents. But then the one given to Moses or Aaron actually eats all the other serpents, right? So then he's like, well, let's go back to Yahweh and see if we can figure this thing out. So they go back and they're like, this didn't quite work out for us. They just kind of cast all their wands and everybody had snakes. What should we do now? And so he says, that's a problem. Go make frogs. And so they're like, all right. So they go back with their magic wand and they wave it over the water and it makes all these frogs and the frogs are going everywhere and the Egyptian magicians say, well, we can make frogs too. And they make a bunch of frogs and all of a sudden they got a huge frog plague. And they're going, oh my God, there's frogs everywhere. So the next thing they decided, well, we can make all the frogs disappear. So they make all the frogs disappear and back and forth between the magicians of the Pharaoh and the magicians of Yahweh. And they battle in the Pharaoh's court. But of course the Bible says now that the Lord hardened the Pharaoh's heart and would not let them go. And that one's always baffled me. It's like, go do some magical dueling with this guy, but I'm going to make sure he doesn't let you go. I don't know. I don't understand that part of it. But finally, it's interesting that he's finally like, all right, snakes didn't work, locusts didn't work, frogs didn't work, lice. Go over there, wave your wand over the sand and create lice. That ought to get him. He's going to let you go for sure. So Moses and Aaron stroll back to the Pharaoh and they're like, all right, take that. And they create lice. And the Egyptian magicians are like, you know what, guy? We can't do lice. I think they got us beat. And then the Egyptian Pharaoh was still hardened by the Lord. And so I still can't let you go. Still can't let you go. So finally, the Lord has to step in and say, all right, I'm going to cast death and plague and everything onto you if you don't let these guys leave. And so he's like, all right, go worship your God. Just, head off in the desert and get the heck out of my hair. Right? So they do, and they take off. Now, if you follow the ancient astronaut story from the Raelian perspective, are any of you guys familiar with the Raelians? Okay, some, not everybody. I'll throw it out there real quick. Rael was a race car driver from France who was contacted by Yahweh according, this is his story. Yahweh came down in a flying saucer, and on his flying saucer he had displayed a Star of David with a swastika interwoven. And he brought Claude Virillion aboard his craft and told him the whole story of the creation of mankind through genetic manipulation, and told him he's going to be their new ambassador. So he is now the ambassador of the Elohim and has been invited to speak before Congress as such. 90s. I don't remember the date. Yeah, oh yeah, it was big news. Yeah, it really was. It really was. He is the founder of Clonaid. And now personally, Rael's website and Clonaid's website are very hokey. And I personally think that this is kind of a disinformation campaign to make you not think about them and to make you not think that they're reputable. But yet then here he is invited before Congress to speak about genetic manipulation of humankind. So Ra-El, of course, Ra is Lord in Egypt, El is Lord in Hebrew. So you've got Lord of Lords, right? And Is-Ra-El is Isis-Ra-El. So you've got the Isis, the Ra, and the sun. So Rael had been commissioned to build the embassy for the arrival of Elohim, our space parents, that had genetically crafted us through manipulation. This is the story of the Raelians. And I did do an interview with one of the Raelian spokespersons, and you can see that on Google Video if you're interested. And I've got all the news clips of Rael going before Congress. So what we've got now is we're back in the story with Moses. They're finally exiting from the Pharaoh, and they follow a column of fire by night and a column of smoke by day, and are led to the mountain. And then Moses is told to go up to the mountain and leave the rest of the down below. And he goes up there. Now Moses himself was raised as a pharaoh. He was brought up, strangely found in the reeds, as many others like Nimrod or Semiramis, and raised by a pharaoh, found by the princess, raised by the pharaoh, taught in all the ways of the pharaoh. And this is probably why he knew how to make lice and all of these other things. So he goes up to the mountaintop to speak with the burning bush, and the burning bush tells him, well, you're going to have to craft these stones, and I need you to translate everything into the language of the people. So you see that Moses knew the language of the gods and the language of the people. And so he took it and he wrote it in both. He had to write it in the language of the gods and the language of the people. And then he brought these stones back down the mountain after 40 days and 40 nights, and nothing happened. He's like, oh, well, okay. And he smashed as we hear in the Ten Commandments. Personally, I've read reports saying that these were actually crystalline structures. Even some say that it was a rubbery crystal. I don't know. I found some interesting things on all of that. But so Moses goes back up the mountain, and this is where you get the story of them worshiping the golden calf. And the golden calf could very well be a worship of Hathor, who was an Egyptian goddess. And I'm not so sure. Many people, I've read a lot of experts on that, and a lot of people consider that they were worshiping Hathor, the Egyptian moon cow goddess. And so so he smashes the stones, and he goes back up the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and they tell him, well, this time you're going to have to do it on your own. I can't help you. This is what the Lord tells him. And so he recrafts the stones, and this time when he walks back down the mountain after 40 days and 40 nights, the stones radiate. They glow. And he's like, oh, okay, I got what we need. He was given very specific designs on how to design the Ark of the Covenant, and you can find these designs in the Douay Bible. They've been removed from most other Bibles, but you can still find the designs in the Douay Bible. And he was told to perfectly construct this in a technological manner, encase the whole thing in gold inside and out, and put two giant cherubim on top, and place the stones inside of it. So then the Hebrews, the Israelites, took this constructed device with its radiating stones. Now, all of this is in the Bible. After this moment, Moses had to wear a veil, cover his face. And that's never quite explained. It's said that he shone light, and so he had to wear a veil. But we might find out more about why he wore a veil here in the rest of the story. So they build this Ark of the Covenant, and it's all set up. It's got its stones, and they got to wrap this thing all up nice and tight with all kinds of hides and fur and everything to make sure nobody touches it, because anybody that touches it dies. And if you get anywhere near it, you drop dead. And so the Israelites, they would carry this thing in front of them, and only certain people were allowed to carry it, and they told stories of levitating and dying and very strange electromagnetic effects going on with the Ark of the Covenant. And they would take this Ark of the Covenant and drag it out in front of them when they were going to war with other tribes. Now, I find it very interesting. I got to throw this out there, that when they were given these 10 commandments, and it says, don't covet your neighbor's property, don't kill, and don't commit adultery, and then they're told to go into this town and kill and take everything. I don't know. So they used this to do that, and they brought this Ark of the Covenant, and they would place it out in front of them, and everyone in front of them would drop dead. And then they would cover it back all up, and they'd win the war, right? Win the battle. So eventually the Ark of the Covenant was stolen from them, and it was brought around from king to king in all these different kingdoms, and whenever the king would open up the Ark of the Covenant, I want to see the rod of Aaron and the staff and the tablets of God and the covenant, they would die. Every time they'd open this up, they would die. They would drop dead. And they died of a withering disease where their hair fell out and they got sores all over them. And this might explain Moses' veil, because he was carrying the stones, which seemed to be radioactive. So it gets passed around from king to king, and they keep dropping dead. And so finally they're like, give it back to the Israelis. We can't do anything with this. And so it was brought back, and this is where we get to the building of Solomon's temple. And this is critical to the story of Freemasonry. The whole ritual of Freemasonry is based on Solomon's temple. And as I mentioned with Sir Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, we have Solomon's house as the core feature in that story. Now, the interesting thing about New Atlantis is that the last chapter is left out. It was never perfected, is what it says. So we don't know the ending of the story. Right? But it's interesting because in New Atlantis, which was written back in the 1700s, it describes a box that they would place outside of their houses that generated and brought electricity into it, and it would actually generate all their walls and everything that they needed. They didn't have any building structures that they had to create. They had this little box, and you just set it out, and your house would be generated with a force field. All of that written in the 1700s by Sir Francis Bacon. I did get the last half of the book. I haven't read it yet, but I found the last chapter. It wasn't written by Sir Francis Bacon. It was picked up later by another with the Philosophical Research Society, which Manly P. Hall is the founder of, and we'll get more to him in a second. So the point of all this is that we're looking at what seems to be high technology in the ancient past. And this Ark of the Covenant seems to be the first weapon of mass destruction given to mankind. And so then we have the building of the house of Solomon's temple, and Solomon wasn't quite the worthy character to build this temple, and he had to turn to King Hiram of Tyre to help him form and build the Solomon's temple. You'll find that Hiram of Tyre is also a huge part of Freemasonry, and Hiram of Tyre got Hiram Abiff, the great architect in Freemasonry, and reportedly the first master mason, to come and design Solomon's temple for them. Now in the Bible, Hiram Abiff is a worker of copper and not an architect, so there is a discrepancy between the Freemasons' version and the biblical version. So the Temple of Solomon was crafted in order to house this weapon of mass destruction that they had gotten on top of the mountain with the Lord, and they had to build it to such specifications and then encase the walls in gold and make sure that all the radiation stayed inside. And they would use this to communicate with God, was one of the functions of the Ark of the Covenant. And one family was left in charge, and they were the Levites. And they would guard till the end of their days, and then their child would take over and guard the house of the temple. Well, eventually, Jerusalem fell, and it was taken over by the Muslims, and Solomon's temple was demolished. And they built the Dome of the Rock, which stands there now. This is where we get to the Templars. The Templars were then an order of 9 men. And we're going to constantly find this motif of 9 men, the Council of 9. In Egypt, you've got what's called the Ennead, or the Ennead, which is the Council of 9. And you're going to find within Freemasonry, up at the higher levels, you have a Council of 9 as well in each region. So these 9 knights were commissioned to guard the Holy Lands for the pilgrims to get across so that they wouldn't get killed by all of these horrible Muslims. I didn't mean to say that they're horrible. I'm just saying this is what they were saying. But now 9 knights is not much of a force, and to be honest, these guys weren't all the biggest, beefiest guys in the world either. But what they did is they went and set up house at the Temple of the Rock, at the old placement of Solomon's temple, and they started digging. And this is the part where it's going to remain shrouded in mystery, because even though I have tons and tons and tons of data, nobody knows what the Templars found under Solomon's temple. But once they did, they vanished. They left the area, and they went and became the most powerful order to stand on the face of the earth, and even today. What happened is most reports are that they found the Ark of the Covenant and scurried it off to France, to the Chateau Lorenz, which is where we get the whole story of the Da Vinci Code. But of course, in that story, it's the Holy Grail, and some say that it was the Holy Grail that they found, and perhaps it was documentation showing the true bloodline of Christ, and that was where they gained their power. It's hard to know. No one knows. Right? There is no answer to that question. What was it that the Templars found under Solomon's temple that made them the most powerful, richest order in the world? So much so that the king and the pope had to come together and kill them all. And even that in itself is an interesting question. So the Templars found what they found, and they went off and they started a mystery school of their own. And all the princes and kings and everybody wanted to be a Templar. Everybody wanted to be a Templar if you were rich. And the interesting thing is that if you do go join the Templar order, then you must give away all your wealth to the order. And so the Templars got richer and richer and richer. But they were called the Poor Knights of Christ. And their symbol, which we'll pass this around, is on the shaft here. And it's 2 knights riding on a single horse. And this was to show that they were poor. And they could only afford 1 horse between the 2 of them. But of course, this is the biggest lie ever. I mean, these guys had more money than anyone. Actually, they created what we now know as the Federal Reserve Note. Because what they would do is they would say, well, you could leave all your gold with us. We'll give you a note, and you can check it in at the next Templar bank down the way, so that when you're traveling, you don't have to carry all your gold with you, right? So that's how we came up with Templar notes, which we now call the dollar bill. And this is how they got super rich, one of the ways. There's certainly a bigger mystery there as to what they found under the temple and how that all worked out. And I can't wait till the day we know, if we ever know. But there are many, many, many researchers looking into that, and none have come up with an answer yet. And of course, we got the Da Vinci Code story. So the poor Knights of Christ changed their names over to the Knights of Solomon's Temple, and that's where we get the name Templar. If you guys want to look at this, this is a Templar sword that I bought at a convenience store. I saw it sitting up, it was right by the register. And I was like, are you just asking somebody to rob you or something? You know, and there's a sword, you know. I'm like, oh, give me your money. And it was sitting there at a convenience store, and it was owned by a Pakistani, I believe he was. And I said, well, you know, this is a Templar sword, right? And he's like, who? I'm like, you're from the Middle East, aren't you? And he's like, yes. You don't know about the Templars, okay. Here, if you want to pass it. Come on. Now, what you'll find is that we're still living in the Templar assassin story. It's still going on. Al-Qaeda has set themselves up on what, well, Al-Qaeda means the base, and they've set themselves up on the base of the assassins, where the assassins ended up. In America, of course, is the resurrection of the Templars, or New Atlantis. Right? So now the Templars have become rich and powerful, and everybody's joined, and they've all given all of their wealth over to the Templars. And the King of France, King Philip, and Pope Clement V had enough. The Templars had always served the Pope. They were servants of the Vatican. And when the Pope turned against them, this seems to have really thrown them for a loop. They didn't know how to take that. But the King and the Pope got together, King of France and the Pope, and decided to eradicate the Templars. They were too rich and too powerful, and whatever knowledge it was that they gained from digging under Solomon's temple was too dangerous. Now, nobody ever found this. They took off, they took to the seas, and they became what we know as pirates. And this is also part of the Masonic ritual, because you were told that you will now be joining the orders of pirates and corsairs. And many people have wondered why how did I become a pirate? But of course the Templar symbol was the skull and bones, so that should give you a clue. So the Pope and the King came together, and on Friday the 13th, 699 years ago today, they put out a palpable to kill off all of the Knights Templar. And this made Friday the 13th the most unlucky day. This is why we live this day in infamy. And now the Church of England, they weren't too ready to kill off the Templars just yet. They kind of liked the guys, and so they put it off until like January, and they let the Templars escape. And the Templars went to England, and they went to Scotland. And lo and behold, next thing we know, we have a Freemason order, the York Rite and the Scottish Rite, which are the Freemason orders that rule today. A lot of that story is told in Braveheart. If you watch Braveheart, and actually there's a number of movies, if you're interested in Freemasonry, you can watch any movie Sean Connery has ever made. The Man Who Would Be King, I mean, that one's a classic. I highly recommend, if you want to get a little more into understanding about what Masonry is, check out The Man Who Would Be King with Sean Connery. And of course, he was rather disappointed when he didn't take up the role that they had offered him in The Matrix, because The Matrix is a very Masonic story, and he was going to get to play the great architect of the universe, but he said he didn't quite understand the story, and he now regrets not having taken the part. So in repercussion of that, he took a part in this new movie called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is all based on Freemasonry as well, which was written by the same guy who wrote From Hell, which is all about Jack the Ripper being a Freemason, and because he had on his Mason ring, they wouldn't prosecute him because Masons don't kill one another. The secret rites, rituals, handshakes, and everything else that are involved within Freemasonry seem to have one purpose, and that is to hide people, to allow them to trust one another and not have to fear being caught. And it's believed by many researchers, John Robertson, Born in Blood, and you'll see how the Masonic compass and square is very much like the Star of David missing 2 lines. Because all of this goes back to Solomon's temple. So he says that that the reason that the Masons have all these secret codes, handshakes, and everything else is to hide, to be able to be sure that you're talking to someone that's not going to turn you into the Pope or the King. And so they go through these rites and rituals to do so. You guys interested in some of the things within the ritual? Now my page kind of folded. This book waited 11 years for me to pick it up. I saw it 11 years and I wanted it, but I could never afford it. And then one day I could afford it. I went in to buy it and he didn't charge me for it. Yeah. But this was written by a Freemason back in the 1800s, and he kind of freaked out. He was a worshipful master, and he actually wrote the handbook of Freemasonry to show how to do all the rituals and to give everybody the proper ways of doing things. And after a little time in the order, he's like, oh my God, you know what? We don't worship Jesus, we worship Lucifer. I think I'm going to panic and write a book about that. So he did, and we've had these, this is a story, I mean, this book is over 200 years old. I was reluctant to mention that, because the title of the book is what caught my eye in the first place. When I saw it sitting there, I was like, oh my God. Because what you see here is the most secret word of a Master Mason. This is the one word that's not spoken without being whispered into the ear, and only on the 5 points of fellowship, when you stand with 1 foot, 1 knee, 1 arm, and you get in this position, and you whisper this word, Mahabon, into the ear of the candidate. And that's the title of the book. And that's what really caught my attention. I was like, oh my God, what's this book? M-A-H-H-A-H, bone, B-O-N-E. And this is the brother that, I don't know. M-A-H-H-A-H? Yeah. B-O-N-E. No, it's 3 words. No, I didn't. It's interesting because this book is very similar to the book that Captain Morgan put out. And if you look into him, you'll find that he was supposedly ritually murdered. And, well, let me read to you the penalty, and that'll give you an idea of what happened to Captain Morgan. Because once you go before the lodge, you go into there and you're blindfolded. You've got a noose around your neck. You've got your left pant leg rolled up above your knee and your left sleeve pulled down over there. And you walk into the door after giving your secret knock, and you're met on the point of a compass or a sword. And often it'll make you bleed. And you stand there with this pointing into your chest, and they ask you to where you come from. And you tell them you come from a lodge of St. John's in Jerusalem. And they'll ask you, well, what did you come here to do? And you say, to learn to subdue my passions and to improve myself in Masonry. Now, Masonry says it makes good men better. I still have a lot of questions about Masonry, and I'm not coming up here before you to tell you that Masonry is Satanism. I'm not sure what it is. These ancient mystery schools and all of the knowledge that has been put into all of this stuff is intriguing, to say the least. So they would say, well, how do you are a Mason, I presume? And he says, yes, I am, and I am so taken and accepted among brothers and fellows. Well, what makes you a Mason? My obligation. Where were you made a Mason? In a regularly constituted lodge of Masons. Well, how do you know yourself to be a Mason? Well, by being often tried, never denied, and ready and willing to be tried again. Well, how shall I know you to be a Mason? By certain signs, a token, a word, and the points of my entrance. So these are the signs, the words, and the things that you would say in order to get into a lodge or to introduce yourself to another Mason so that they would know that who you are. And he says, well, what are signs? And it says right angles, horizontals, and perpendiculars. Now that's very intriguing because when we're looking at the Templars were the ones who constructed cathedrals. Chartres and all of Roslin and many other cathedrals, and it's believed that one of the things they found under Solomon's temple were the ancient building instructions of how to build domes and arches, and that's why we've got the gold and arches. I didn't get to gold yet. Yes. Their other symbol was the double cross, and that one ought to be rather obvious, and that's the symbol for Exxon. So he says, give me a sign, and you would give the sign like this. It would be your first, well, drop your hand up. And this would be your first entered apprentice symbol, and what that is in reference to is the obligation that you took, your oath that you took. And your oath is binding yourself under no less penalty than to have your throat cut across, your tongue pulled out by its roots and buried in the rough sands of the sea at low water mark where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours. Should you ever knowing or willingly violate this, your solemn oath and obligation as an entered apprentice Mason. This is what happened to Captain Morgan. I believe the mafia calls it the Sicilian necktie. Yeah. You see? Going to find the mafia connected in here with this as well. So what you seek when you go to Masonry is light, and what you want to do is get before the worshipful master and tell him that you seek light, that you have come as a brother in darkness and you need to be brought to light. Now there's tons and tons and tons and tons of data on this whole thing. We've got like The Secret Destiny of America, written by the 33rd degree Mason Manly P. Hall. If you're interested in what Manly P. Hall looks like, he seems like a very interesting fellow. I would have liked to have talked with him. That's Manly Palmer Hall, and he's the founder of the American Philosophical Society, a 33rd degree Mason, and known as the greatest philosopher in Masonry of his time. And he has many, many, many interesting books. I try to gather them all because I'm real interested in all that he has to say, but this one is The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And I actually haven't read enough of this to tell you, but I'll show you a little something. And you can order this down at Barnes & Noble down up the street there, and it's $110. I had to have it though, okay? I went to the Temple of the 33rd, the Supreme Mother Council of the World, because I knew that it was the first American public library, and well, that's a really good way to control information. But I wanted to know more, and so I went down there, and when I got there, I started looking around, and I was all excited, and the lead librarian there was a nice lady who was also the lead historian at the time, and she says, well, what are you looking for? And I was like, well, only two people I knew of were Manly P. Hall and Albert Pike. And so I was like, well, I'm really hoping to find some Manly P. Hall. And she says, oh, well, I think that's open on the table out there. I'll show you something interesting. Here we go, Dagon Owens, the fish people, which is, of course, heavy in my research. If you get my film, you know that I'm into the fish people. Because I mean, has anybody heard of the merfolk of Atlantis? Does anybody remember Patrick Duffy as the man from Atlantis, being the merfolk, being a superhero merman? I guess I was the only one who watched that. That was before he was on Dallas or whatever that. Aquaman? Yeah. You'll find that all of our superheroes are incarnations of these mythological characters. Superman is a Nephilim, an Elohim, an alien that came from another planet that has super strength, superpowers. There were two things in this book I wanted to show you. Well, when I went over and she told me, yeah, you know, Manly's open there on the table, I thought, well, that's not a surprise now that I'm so used to synchronicities. I was hoping to find, of course we got Pythagoras, and he's a big one within Masonry as well. Actually, I could have brought any book on my shelf to show you, because all of them, Plato, Milton, Dante, Voltaire, all of it is all based off of these ancient mystery schools. Even Wizard of Oz and Grimm's fairy tales. All of them come from these brotherhoods. I was hoping to find the picture of Atlantis to show you, because they absolutely do believe that they're from Atlantis. And when I take the names of the space shuttle and it's the Columbia Endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis, and I start to think maybe Atlantis is not on planet Earth. There probably is, and I'll just jump to the one that I was really going to show you. The Atlantean one we'll get to. I'll show it to you when we're done. But one of the lead authors reported to be for the King James Bible was Shakespeare, right? He has his name coded into the King James Version a number of times. And many people, I've got another book sitting over there that's 200 years old, telling how Sir Francis Bacon is Shakespeare. And of course, Sir Francis Bacon wrote the New Atlantis, which America was based on. So here what we have is a picture of Sir Francis Bacon, and he wrote New Atlantis, and that's, or I'm sorry, that was Shakespeare, and that's Sir Francis Bacon. The Shakespeare that we all know of, that the actual man that he wrote about or as, had a illiterate daughter. So, not Sir Francis Bacon, but the man that was known as Shakespeare. But of course, Sir Francis Bacon was known as Spear Shaker. So we've got these Templars, they come along and they got their secret power, and this secret power keeps getting passed and passed throughout time. And it got passed up to Hitler, and Hitler started making flying saucers, and it got passed over from Hitler into America, and now we're making flying saucers. There's more to this story than we're ready to accept, I think, but we're definitely going to dig deeper and deeper into this thing. Masonry itself is just self-described as the same as all the ancient mystery schools of Mithra and Tammuz and all the other dead and resurrected gods that were coming from the past. And they absolutely cast rituals within the temple. They use ritual items such as wine, corn, and oil in order to do their incantations, which these are the ritual. Got a little corn in there. And this man here, Ledbetter, one of the fine Freemasons in the story, was upset because the orders were using maize instead of corn, or they were using corn instead of wheat. And this was bringing about the wrong spirits to the temple, and they were spirits of chaos that were throwing everything into disarray. And so he would have to go and reconsecrate each of the lodges to try and get the right things back. And of course, you noticed my apron. This is one of the more flashy ones, but the standard Masonic apron would be of a lambskin. And some believe that this plain white skin, which they say is a badge, an emblem of purity, was taken because of the Templars had to wear lambskin underwear and weren't allowed to take it off either. They were some stinky guys, I'll tell you, big time. St. Bernard, when he took over, they wouldn't let them bathe. It was part of the whole thing. Now, here are the richest guys in the world, and they're not allowed to bathe or take off their lambskin underwear. I don't know. So that's where the apron seems to come from. Although if you go to the ancient Egyptian pictures, you will find that they are all also wearing aprons. And of course, in the founding of America, they were all wearing aprons as well. 33 of the 35 signers of the Declaration of Independence wore aprons and swore an oath to the great architect of the universe. 33 of the 35, yeah. Isn't that? Yeah, you got to wonder if they plan all this stuff out or if it's just the nature of the universe, because all those connections with 911 and everything else are amazing. So what we've got is ritual to bring about certain spiritual powers to inhabit the temple of the temple of the lodge. And when I went to the temple of the 33rd, they absolutely told me, well, you know, this place is haunted. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. This guy's ashes are in the building, and he's kept housed right there. I don't know if they have a picture of him in here, but it's in my video. If you're Albert Pike. They gave me these 2 books when I got there. They were like, they found out who my dad was. And they had told me, you know, you're not allowed to be in the temple alone at any point in time. But they brought us to the J. Edgar Hoover room, and I got to play with his gold-plated phone and check things out. And then eventually we went to the Burl Ives room, and they had all his albums on the wall, you know, the Rudolph guy, Rudolph the reindeer stories. And then they took me to the Albert Pike room, and there they left me alone with my friend, but they left us in there. And she went to go retrieve my grandfather's membership card, because I had actually given her my grandfather's name instead of my dad, because I didn't know what position my dad was in at this point, because one of the rules within the order is that you can't marry another worshipful master's wife, and well, my mom was married to another worshipful master before my dad. That's the temple there. That's me sitting on the Sphinx. It's kind of hard to see. That's in D.C., 13 blocks from the Capitol. Supreme Mother Council of the World. Yeah. And so she slipped me these 2 books, and she says, now these are $50 a piece. Now just put them under your coat and take them with you. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And I'm ready to go. And she's like, you want to see the floor plans to the building? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I really do. But I can't. I got to get out of here. She saw my excitement. But so the Masons, they have all kinds of little catechism phrases and whatnot to let one another know each other in darkness as well in light, and little codes that you can give in a court of law to get you out of trouble, and all kinds of little things that if you learn, you can maybe get away with, and if you don't get away with it, they'll just cut your throat. But they say they don't do that anymore. So we'll find out. Luckily, I don't think I've given you guys enough of the ritual for them to want to kill me yet. Interesting questions. All of the questions are based on the ritual that they ask you, and they'll ask you something like, so, I see there's a spider on your shoulder. Where did you get it? And then you're supposed to know the reply, which is, oh, I got it in the rubbish pile with the ruffians. You know? And this is all part of the ritual, because as you're brought into the ritual and you got your blindfold on, and you got your pants rolled up, and you're being towed around by your cable tow, and each time you're living the King or Hiram Abiff's life, who he was killed because he wouldn't give up the secret word of a Master Mason. And he was the original Master Mason. And so you reenact Hiram Abiff, and they hit you on the head with a number of instruments like the gavel. And that'd be like the last one. They clock you on the head with that, and that's when you find your light. But so each of the questions that they would ask you pertain to either the history of Freemasonry or parts and aspects of the ritual. Any questions?
What does the G stand for?
Oh, the ultimate question. Nobody knows. The high priest of Wiccan Church, who was a Freemason, says it stands for goddess, and this one seems most correct to me because I see how much they worship the goddess. Others say that it stands for the generative act. That's what Tex Mars said. Some will tell you it means Gnosticism because this is the ancient Gnostics, and others will tell you it means geometry because they're geometrists, and then finally they'll tell you, well, it means God. And George. George Washington. Well, I think the G was in use before Washington, but I don't know.
You said that earlier that you felt like they saying they were worshiping Jesus, but they were actually worshiping Lucifer?
No. Actually, you're not allowed to use the name of Jesus or pretty much any other deity within the order. Now, they do accompany or accommodate to different religions. So if you were a Muslim and you went into a temple and you wanted to join, they would have the Quran out instead of the Bible. It doesn't matter to them which holy book is out on the altar. And so what happens is that they do profess faith in the powers of Lucifer, and that they can use these powers to control the world. The big question is, who's Lucifer and why? So, well, Lucifer is Venus. The original word in the Bible, Lucifer was not included in the Bible until the King James Version, and if you believe what all I've told you, then it was Sir Francis Bacon that put the word in there in the first place. He also did, he was a master of words, so he changed the word from congregation to church, making all the emphasis off the people and putting it on the institution itself. Because prior to the King James Version, the word would have been congregation, and wherever three can gather in his name, that's where you would have a church.
Yeah, you're definitely right on that.
Yeah. And Lucifer never existed in the Bible up until the King James Version, and then he was equated with the devil within Milton's Paradise Lost and Dante's Divine Comedy. That's where the interlink between Lucifer and Satan came. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Lucifer is Satan. But Lucifer is Venus, absolutely. In the Greek, that the word is formed from, Lucifer is Venus. And so when you're standing down at the clock tower and you see the goddess Columbia sitting there, and on either side of her a pentagram and a shell, which of course are Texaco and Shell's symbol, these are symbols of Venus, and therefore, i.e., Lucifer. And then you might notice that she's being drawn by merfolk. And in ancient Egypt, a pyramid is a mer. And so we could say pyramid folk instead of merfolk. And of course, America is also another one. It's the Littleford statue out in front of the big phallus, the clock tower where the guy shot it.
Oh, it's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, check it out. It's crazy. Or get my film. I do a half hour on just that alone. Oh.
Yes, can you tell me about the awesome eye of God and the dollar?
No. I really can't. There's not much to say about what that, many have said things, but nobody really knows. Like, is it the all-seeing live Lucifer, the enlightener, the light bearer?
Is it the left eye or the right eye?
That's a good question, too. We'd have to look.
But there's no King Eye.
I do want to say that, yeah, and then of course David Icke has the very fact that it looks quite reptilian. I do want to say that when Y2K came about and everybody was worried about the computer meltdown, I was the one standing out there going, but they're capping the Great Pyramid with gold. And everybody's like, what are you talking about, Freeman? And I'm like, dude, they're doing the 12 Dreams of the Sun ceremony, and they're going to cap the Great Pyramid with gold. And of course they did put the eye on the pyramid at that time too. And, but the capping of the Great Pyramid gold didn't happen, and the front page of USA Today read, Muslims stop the Freemasons from capping the Great Pyramid with gold. And that was the front page of USA Today, December 1999. Well, who noticed? Other than me.
That's right.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Significance of the captain?
It's the completion. When you're looking at the dollar bill and the capstone is floating above the pyramid, it's only when they completed the New World Order or the structure that the capstone was placed. So the not getting to cap it is an intriguing thing. And yeah. And I wonder a lot about this because we are looking at this same story of the assassins and the Templars over and over again. As the Muslims would be the assassins and the Americans would be the Templars.
I have a question. What was the name of that first Bible that you mentioned?
Douay. It's D-U-A-Y.
D-U-A-Y?
Yeah. It's one of the earlier Bibles. I haven't been able to find one yet.
You never read it?
Douay. Just like King James, this is the Douay.
I had a dream that somehow or another the dollar bills from the exchange had gotten some, and they looked like coupons. They looked
Well, that's what they want, yeah. That's, you know.
There's nothing on the back. They were just blank on the back. They were only one-sided.
Yeah. Well, if you look at this story, and you'll find that the original form of control was religion, and the biggest building in town was the church steeple. And then the Templars came into power, and they started giving out these reserve notes, and the banks became the biggest buildings in town. But if you look out today, you're going to find that the biggest building in town is the cell phone companies, and you'll understand why they call it Next L, the next Lord. So that's the next step in the process. So yeah, they're going to make money look hokey. They're going to teach you how to write bad checks. I saw a whole sort of story on the Discovery Channel on how to write bad checks and get away with it. So this is a flawless plan. Taught you how to use invisible ink and how the routing numbers would lead you to such a place that you could never get caught. Told you step by step how to steal from the bank through checks, because they want us to steal banks, or steal checks and make checks. You know, so everybody's like, oh, get rid of the checking system, get rid of the cash system. You know, we need a chip to be safe.
And they kind of need you to comply by free will, too, right?
Yes, yes, that was right back to the beginning of the story. When you enter the thing, it must be of your own free will and accord in order to join any of these orders. And also, this is what I believe the spiritual aspect of this whole story is, that it must be of our free will and accord. And so then we're presented with all of the information that, you know, 911 was an inside job was given away on the pilot of the lone gunman, and prior to 911, right? And so they all knew about this. I knew about it. I predicted 911 to the day, and it was kind of a non-event for me. So it's fun to kind of watch how everybody else is dealing with it, because for me, I was like, well, yeah, you know, I told you. You know, everything's going according to plan. Nothing has gone out of plan yet. This is all a great scheme just to confuse you and control you. And I had put the same, I didn't have as definitive a reason to make a prediction for today, but going along the lines where the Twin Towers were built on 9/11 1957, and the Pentagon was built on 9/11 1941, then, of course, both destroyed on 9/11 2001. I took this formula and said, well, what else fits this formula? And I realized that 1013 was the day, today, the 699th anniversary of the Templars. 1013 is the day that they put the cornerstone in the White House in a Masonic ceremony, of course casting their wine, corn, and oil in the ritual and calling on all the right spirits to inhabit the White House. And I thought maybe that there might be something that goes on at the White House today. And of course, it seems that Buffalo, New York got it instead. But interestingly, Chris Carter is the one that created the episode of The Lone Gunman about 911, and his production company is, of course, 1013.
You say George Washington and all the other guys cast the corn in the wine in order to bring in the right spirits. I mean, what are the right spirits? What are they going to help them do? What's the end game here? What are they playing for? What is the point?
I'd like to get that guy back there to answer that question. Yeah, I don't think he wants to go up here. The end game, what's the result? That is the big question. I posed that one to you just the other day. I was like, what is this all for? You know, cyborg humans that are going to be ultra warriors, and what is the point of all of this? And I don't know. You know, when I'm looking at the evidence and I see this ancient astronaut story boiling up into this whole thing, but of course it fits, well, you got to accept the spiritual side of it as well, because we definitely are in war with these fallen angels, and all of the symbols that we see out there, Phillips 66, Highway 66, and W, are all symbols of the fallen angels. There's more to the story than simple takeover or conquest by an alien race. But I believe that we have seen the rise of Atlantis here in America, that this is New Atlantis, and that this conquest has a lot to do with our position in the universe and the timing. And there's also the arrival of these extraterrestrials that have returned and are being filmed by the Columbia Space Shuttle. So a lot of things coming to a head at this moment. I think their goal is to have the spiritual power. I believe that the story of Atlantis is that they had superior technology but inferior spirituality. And the Lemurians had superior spirituality and lacked the high technology. And when the Atlanteans would come and attack the Lemurians, they would fall dead because they had like an insta karma return. So anytime you tried to come and attack the Lemurians, the attack would fall on your own head. And so then the Atlanteans would die. And this pissed them off to the point where they actually cast their biggest, baddest weapon. And I find this very interesting. Let's see what I did with that. Because now, a big portion of this story has always been gold, right? The gods wanted gold. The Egyptians mined gold, the Incans mined gold, the Mayans mined gold. This is my gold Millennium Falcon card. Got it off QVC. Yeah. They sold out while I was on the phone. Yeah, I was excited. Never let me watch a Star Wars QVC vid. I'm like, oh, I gotta have that. Richard Hoagland has video, and it's in my video as well because I took it and said, wow, I gotta talk about this. There is a Death Star surrounding Saturn. And it's an old, ancient Death Star. It looks very much like the destroyed Death Star in George Lucas's old film, in the third one, when they had to restructure the Death Star. So we've got the story of the Atlanteans destroying their planet, or their continent, or their city, or however you want to take it. And I believe it might have something to do with this Death Star, because George Lucas tells us a lot of this story. And he even, in the last one, in episode 1, I guess it was, the Return of the, or 3, Return of the, Revenge of the Sith, the whole story of the decline and fall of America is told in there, and the character General Grievous is, of course, Osama bin Laden, and that's why the guy has a cough, because of bin Laden needing dialysis, and it's just kind of a symbolic, and then of Osama bin Laden, and then we got the banking guild and all the other members, and then, of course, the fall of the Republic, when the rise of the Emperor. Well, when the Emperor arises and he decides to kill off all the Jedi, he says this 3 times, execute Order 66. And if you watch my film, you know that 66 means W. So W kills all the Jedi. And there is a Death Star floating out around Saturn, and this might have been the ancient weapon that destroyed the planets. And what I believe happened was that even when they were destroyed, now this is agreed upon by many scholars, so it's just a matter of how it happened is what's in dispute, and many think that it was Venus that caused all the problems, Lucifer once again. And that's the work of Velikovsky, Emmanuel Velikovsky, and others like Michael Tsarian. And what I believe happened was that actually the planets, they tried to destroy Lemuria, and this caused such a great catastrophe that the planets actually skipped a groove in the gravitational wave. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a gravitational, like a record album, coming out from the sun, and we stay within that groove as we go around the sun, but you can jump grooves. And I believe that Mars and Earth jumped grooves, and Earth actually expanded as it went away, and Mars lost all of its atmosphere, and a lot of it came crashing down to Earth and caused what we call the Great Flood. Let's see, that's David or Zechariah Sitchin, and I don't feel he goes far enough, because in his story they came from somewhere, and you know, he's got planets cruising through the galaxy and needing gold for their atmosphere. I don't think that's the right story. I think it's misinformation. I think it has a lot of truth, but I think it just starts at this one point telling you, oh, well, the gods came down and built pyramids and started civilization, but that doesn't answer all the questions, because there is absolutely structures on Mars and the Death Star orbiting Saturn. So if he's not including all of this information, you're missing a piece of the puzzle.
So obviously you're thinking of the movie like Men in Black's like big time into that kind
I have met 2 people that told me there are 57 species of alien in contact with our planet right now. One of them's going to be on my show. He's the head of the Exopolitics Institute, and they actually have college courses on this. And the other one was my best friend's dad, who I went over to his house for Thanksgiving and had a bit of a freak out because nobody knew that his dad was involved in all this stuff until I started talking to him. What?
And they all have different takes. Some are more evil and some are more...
Yeah, actually they're all outlined. If you go to my website and read ET Motivations, all of the different species are outlined as to what they're doing and who they are. And there's even mention of the indigenous reptilian race that has existed on planet Earth longer than the Homo sapiens. But why gold is a very important question, why we've been mining this planet for gold for ages and ages and ages, and why it was the Templars that gathered all the gold, and now all the gold seems to be disappearing. You have heard that Fort Knox is empty, right? Yeah, personally, I think it's all being shipped off on the Columbia or the Atlantis going up to the ISIS. Yeah, you're right. Well, you know, I got to shuttle something. You know, what else have you got all these damn shuttles for?
There's gold under the World Trade Towers.
Well, that story was told in Die Hard. Of course, because they got to tell us all the stories to begin with, and you'll find that Die Hard, they had a terrorist attack, and the men used that as a cover to go down and steal all the gold in the basement of the building. And then it was hauled out in the dump trucks that came to clean up the debris. Well, yeah, it was Halliburton that cleaned up all the debris before anybody could get it. Yeah. That was all in Die Hard. I mean, they got to tell us, you see. They got to tell us beforehand. Because it must be of our own free will and accord. So you guys want to see some crazy madness? I mean, this is nothing. You want to see something that's really going to blow your minds? You guys got to see this now. Sure. I've heard that. I don't know. No, I don't know. Jesse Jackson is on that list. Yeah, I think the best source for that type of information is Tex Mars's Codex Magica. Yeah, it's over there on the shelf. It's right behind you there, Steve.
Are all 33rd degree Masons on the same page?
No, not at all. I've met 33rd degree Masons, and some of them are honorary, some of them are operative. And it's said that a 33rd is really the stepping stone, the beginning of the real work, the great work.
That's not the highest degree.
No, it said there's 360 degrees, which would make more sense because of their geometrical. So no, not at all. I mean, there's a big difference between Manly P. Hall and Bob Dole. Right?
In your video, you said one of their goals was to eliminate 80% of the population.
That's what the Bilderbergers said.
And Alex Jones said the same thing.
Yeah, he talked to the same guy I did.
You were making reference to the Bible, and in the Bible it says at the end, tribulation, some only 20% will stay. Those are the righteous people, and the rest will be killed off in the tribulation.
Right.
Georgia Guidestones also address something like that.
Yes.
Well, what's the correlation there?
And another really good one is the Limits to Growth by the the Club of Rome, which is being taught in all our college campuses. They say, oh, we got to kill everybody and have a UN. What are you thinking?
Trying to make themselves the righteous? Are they trying to...
I see them forming an Armageddon script. The whole shock and awe thing, I think they're following a plan. I sometimes wonder if this is not a prophecy given to us like the Bene Gesserit witches did with Dune, where they placed a mythos on the planet so that when they arrived they were worshipped as gods, or goddesses, because they were worshiping it. And I don't know, you know, is it prophecy, was it, but some of it seems that they're following a script, because shock and awe was the name of the divine goddess. I don't know how many of you guys have heard this. I'd say, I think I've given this story a few times, but The Shekinah in Hebrew is the divine goddess, and we called it the shock and awe campaign when we blew up Baghdad. And so the divine goddess, which is also known as the divine whirlwind, and this is all in the Bible. I think it's in Kings. The divine whirlwind comes down and strikes Nebuchadnezzar, and while Saddam Hussein was rebuilding Nebuchadnezzar's palace and all of Babylon, and he had structures made with him as Nebuchadnezzar. And so the shock and awe comes down and strikes Nebuchadnezzar, and we use what? The mother of all bombs, the bomb just below a nuke. And of course in military you use acronyms, and so it was the Moab. And so you go back to your Bible and you'll see where it says the divine shock and awe comes down and strikes Nebuchadnezzar using the Moabites. Right?
How I've heard it pronounced in like religious circles is Shekinah.
Shekinah, yeah.
Shekinah glory is how most of those preachers say it.
Right, you're right. Yeah, they use a play on the words, you know, so shock and awe and Shekinah, yeah.
Correct pronunciation would be.
It'd be more like Shekinah, if I could really get it out that right, yeah. Yes. Or Sean Connery, yeah, that's good. Yeah, you're going to find a lot of these guys are involved. I mean, the Grateful Dead, the P-Funk, the Paul McCartney, all of them are, huh? Boston. No, they hated each other. No, I don't know about Boston. I just met a few of them. And, definitely, I mean, this has encapsulated our worlds, and the only ones that don't seem to know about it is us.
What about like Pink Floyd and Zeppelin?
Led Zeppelin, absolutely, a huge OTO, along with Tool. They practice ritual magic within their music. Tool actually practices Enochian magic within their music. And, but Pink Floyd, I still haven't found any bad about Pink Floyd. Yeah. No, I can't find anything coded in Pink Floyd.
What's OTO?
OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis, the Order of the Eastern Knights Templar. It is Crowley's church, and it was Crowley's birthday yesterday.
What does Templar mean?
Order of the Knights of the Temple, Solomon's Temple, so the Templar.
I was listening to somebody today say that it meant thief. Templar means thief. Well, it might have after they got
Certainly
done with
means
it.
pirate,
Yeah.
no doubt about that. It doesn't mean pirate, but they were pirates. Nobody ever found the Templar fleet. You know, they took off. They had enough. They came here, actually. You know, there's a lot of evidence to show that they were here long before Columbus. And actually, Columbus isn't even Columbus, but you got to see my video to get all that. Because I'm tired, and I think we should watch this crazy madness. We can talk more. And of course, you know, every night, Thursday night, 8 p.m., check me out. I'm going to get heavy into ancient astronauts this week, and then I'm going to have the head of the Ancient Astronauts Institute on my show the next week. So we're going to start looking into these ancient structures and what that could all mean. And crazy madness of it all. Demons, the fallen angels.
Did you ever study that one UFO that landed somewhere, I think it was in China, that had looks like actually a lot of things that were actually buried on this one site? It has to do with ancient astronauts.
Oh, that's the Dropa stone. Yeah, they were from Sirius. Now, interesting thing, Syrian symbol, the ancient symbol for Sirius, is an obelisk, a dome, and a pentagram. So you just go outside and look, and you'll see an ancient symbol of Sirius. There again, that's all outlined in my film as well, because, yeah, I do believe that our planet is ruled by beings from Sirius. At least that's what all the symbols say. So, I don't know how to even introduce this film, because this is some mind-blowing stuff. Have you guys heard of Fritz Springmeier?
Yes.
And of course, you can get his book out there too, Bloodlines of the Holy Grail, or the Illuminati. And then he wrote a whole book on how to make your own mind control slave, which I guess is a little more rare.
It's like 800 pages.
Yeah, I started reading it, and it's got me thinking.
I need one of those.
Yeah, I could never, what is wrong with these people? That's the big question, because, yeah.
There's
No, they're not stupid. They're not stupid.
The long-term effects of what they're doing are negative. Every bit of it's negative. They're hurting themselves.
Yeah. Well, they're,
They're winning.
So long they don't understand that, John.
And the other thing is, what they're doing is they're destroying their own hope of expansion.
well, that's why we've got to continue to present this information. And even though we've been talking about it for 600 some odd years, we got to continue to look at the picture until we get more and more answers. Because some things we didn't know until now. We didn't know there were structures on Mars. Didn't know there was a Death Star surrounding Saturn. There are other pieces of the puzzle that are only coming into focus now. And so we got to continue to keep asking this: why, why gold? Why? What made them so powerful? And so that's really what I want to present to you: is the proper questions. What I feel are the proper questions, and I don't have the answers. You know, yet. We're gonna keep digging, keep digging. So yeah, if you ever wondered who was running your country, well, it's not the person standing at that podium saying he's the president, and this film's going to prove that to you. So let's get it.